The first sign of trouble wasn't the smoke curling above my backyard grill. It was the sharp click of heels on the sidewalk. I glanced up from the sizzling burgers just as Karen appeared, clutching a clipboard like it was a weapon. Her eyes locked on the barbecue flames as though I'd unleashed a threat to civilization itself. "Excuse me," she snapped, marching up the driveway. "This gathering is not approved by the HOA. You'll need to shut it down immediately." Around me, the hum of laughter, clinking soda cans, and the scent of ribs on the smoker filled the warm Saturday air. Families lounged in lawn chairs. Kids darted between sprinklers, squealing. It wasn't just my backyard. It was the neighborhood's summer celebration. And for weeks, everyone had been looking forward to it. I wiped my hands on a towel and faced her calmly. "Karen, it's a barbecue. People are just enjoying the weekend." Her nostrils flared. "The bylaws clearly prohibit open flames outside of designated grills. And that," she jabbed a finger toward my smoker, "is clearly not in compliance. Not to mention you never filed for an event permit." A hush spread as neighbors turned to watch. You could almost hear the burgers sizzling louder in the silence. Then Mr. Harris, the retired firefighter from across the street, rose from his chair. "That's a smoker, not a bonfire. Perfectly safe. I should know. I used the same model for years." Karen's face reddened, but she held her ground. "The rules exist for a reason. If you don't shut this down, I'll be forced to report you to the board and issue fines." Whispers rippled through the crowd. Mothers exchanged annoyed looks. Teens muttered under their breath. Someone even booed. I took a step forward, lowering my voice so only she could hear. "Karen, people came here to relax, not to be policed. Maybe you should grab a plate instead of a pen." For a moment, I thought she might soften. But instead, she spun on her heel, clipboard snapping shut. "You'll regret this," she warned, storming back down the driveway. The party resumed with forced laughter, but unease lingered in the air. Because everyone knew what I knew. When Karen made a threat, she followed through. And if she wanted to shut down my barbecue, she wasn't going to stop until she tried every trick in her book. But none of us could have predicted what happened next, or how the entire neighborhood would rise up against her. Sunday morning dawned with the smell of charcoal still clinging faintly to the air. I thought the drama might have ended with Karen's stormy exit, but I was wrong. By noon, I found a notice taped to my front door. HOA violation, unauthorized gathering, unsafe equipment, fine pending. Karen's handwriting was unmistakable, bold, slanted and underlined 3 times. She hadn't even bothered to run it through the board officially. I shook my head, laughing bitterly. Unbelievable. But it wasn't just me. Within the hour, texts started buzzing in from neighbors. She left the same notice on my porch and I wasn't even hosting. Can she even do this? I thought the board had to approve. She's targeting everyone who came yesterday. The group chat lit up like fireworks. Clearly, Karen hadn't just declared war on me. She'd gone after the whole neighborhood. By evening, people gathered in my backyard again. Though this time, there were no burgers. No laughter, just frustration. Mrs. Alvarez, who'd lived here for 30 years, waved her notice angrily. "This is harassment. She's making up rules as she goes." Mr. Harris crossed his arms. "She can't issue fines on her own. The HOA board has to vote." "Exactly," I said. "And you all saw last night? She doesn't have the neighborhood on her side. We do." Silence fell, followed by murmurs of agreement. Then Jenna, the young mom from down the street, spoke up. "What if we make it official? Draft a petition. If enough of us sign, the board will have to listen. Maybe even vote her out." The idea hit the crowd like a spark to dry grass. Heads nodded. Voices rose. People who'd never agreed on anything, suddenly united under one cause, standing up to Karen. That night, under the glow of porch lights, we wrote it out. The petition called for a vote of no confidence against Karen's self-appointed authority, citing her misuse of power, harassment of residents, and unauthorized enforcement of rules. I looked around at the neighbors, young families, retirees, college kids renting their first homes, all signing, all tired of living under Karen's constant surveillance. When I signed last, I felt a weight lift. For once, we weren't just complaining about her. We were doing something. But Karen wasn't the type to back down quietly. And when word of the petition reached her, she wouldn't just fight back. She'd escalate. And none of us were prepared for how far she'd go. The petition spread faster than gossip at a church potluck. By midweek, nearly every house had signed it. People passed it around at mailboxes, during dog walks, even at the corner coffee cart. The momentum felt unstoppable, until Karen found out. She didn't confront me directly this time. Instead, she played her favorite card, intimidation through paper. On Wednesday morning, every mailbox in the neighborhood held a thick packet labeled Official HOA Directive. Inside were pages of new rules, typed, stapled, and stamped with the HOA letterhead she'd copied from old documents. Highlights included, no outdoor cooking devices of any kind. Gatherings over 5 people must be pre-approved by the board. Noise curfews extended to 6 p.m. The kicker? At the bottom of each page, Karen had scrawled her signature as if it carried the weight of law. Neighbors stormed into my yard that afternoon, clutching the packets like eviction notices. She can't do this, can she? Jenna asked, her voice shaking with anger. No, I said firmly. These aren't legal unless the board votes on them. Mr. Harris nodded. She's bluffing. But she's hoping we'll fold before the petition reaches the board. The mood turned restless. People were scared. Scared of fines, of retaliation, of endless battles with a woman who never seemed to run out of energy. That evening, as I grilled a small dinner for my family, I caught sight of Karen lurking at the corner. Not approaching, just watching. Clipboard tucked under her arm like a sheriff surveying outlaws. She finally called out, "Enjoy it while you can. Your little rebellion won't last." Then she vanished into the twilight. It was unsettling, but it also strengthened our resolve. The next day, Mrs. Alvarez delivered the petition to the HOA board's secretary. With over 70% of the neighborhood signed on, it demanded an emergency meeting. The secretary promised to call one within the week. That's when Karen struck harder. Friday morning, code enforcement trucks rolled into the neighborhood. They drove straight to my house, citing complaints of unsafe structures and illegal fire hazards. Karen had reported me again. The inspector shook his head after a quick check. Everything's fine here. Looks like someone's wasting our time. But the message was clear. Karen wasn't giving up. If she couldn't silence us with fake rules, she'd bury us in red tape and fear. We knew the HOA meeting would be a battle. What we didn't know was just how explosive it would become. The night of the emergency HOA meeting felt electric, like the air before a thunderstorm. Cars lined the streets, and neighbors filed into the clubhouse, whispering, clutching copies of the petition. The usual dozen attendees had multiplied into nearly the entire neighborhood. Karen sat at the front table, chin raised high, clipboard resting like a sword across her lap. She wore a bright red blazer, as if she were on trial but determined to look victorious. The board members shifted nervously, clearly unprepared for the crowd that had gathered. The chairperson cleared his throat. We're here to address concerns raised by several residents. One item of business, a petition calling for a vote of no confidence in board member Karen. Vice President Karen, she interrupted sharply, glaring. Murmurs of irritation rippled through the room. Mrs. Alvarez stood up, waving the petition. This is about more than titles. Karen has harassed residents, invented rules, and tried to fine families without due process. We're tired of living under her microscope. Applause broke out, louder than anyone expected. Karen slammed her clipboard on the table. You people don't understand. Without strict enforcement, this neighborhood falls apart. Look at his barbecue. She jabbed a finger at me. Open flames! Noise! Disorder! I'm the only one keeping things safe. I stood slowly, meeting her glare. Safe? Karen, nothing about you watching kids with binoculars or handing out fake violations makes anyone feel safe. You're not protecting us, you're controlling us. The room erupted. Voices clashed. People stood, fingers pointed. For every word Karen spat about standards and property values, 3 neighbors countered with stories of her bullying and overreach. Finally, the chairperson raised his hands. Order! The board has heard enough. By our bylaws, we must vote on the petition tonight. Karen's face went pale. You can't! I forbid it! But the votes were counted openly, one by one. 4 board members in favor of removing her. Only Karen opposed herself. The decision was final. Karen was stripped of her authority effective immediately. The room burst into cheers. Neighbors hugging, high-fiving, some even crying from relief. For the first time in years, the weight of Karen's shadow seemed to lift. But as I looked at her, trembling with fury, I knew it wasn't over. Her clipboard clattered to the floor as she hissed, "You'll all regret this!" And in that moment, the victory felt fragile. Because Karen wasn't walking away. She was planning her next move. The morning after the meeting, the neighborhood felt different. The air seemed lighter. Kids rode their bikes without glancing nervously over their shoulders. And laughter carried freely down the streets. For the first time in years, people felt unshackled from Karen's clipboard reign. But the peace didn't last long. By noon, Karen was at it again. This time, standing on the curb with a megaphone. She must have dug out of some forgotten garage sale box. This neighborhood is doomed without proper order, she shouted, pacing dramatically. You've all fallen for lies. The board is corrupt. Some neighbors peeked through their blinds. Others shook their heads and ignored her. I stepped outside, not to argue, but to grill again. The smell of smoked ribs floated into the air. Intentional, a reminder that her power was gone. She turned the megaphone toward me. You think you've won? This isn't over! Before I could answer, something remarkable happened. Jenna wheeled out her own grill onto her driveway. Then Mr. Harris set up a folding table with a cooler of sodas. One by one, neighbors followed suit. Within an hour, nearly the entire street was alive with the clatter of tongs, the sizzle of meat, and the murmur of conversation. It wasn't just a barbecue, it was a declaration. Karen's voice faltered as she realized what was happening. She tried shouting over the noise, but the sound of music, laughter, and clinking glasses drowned her out. For once, her clipboard and megaphone held no power. Eventually, she stormed back into her house, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. But even then, people barely noticed. The party had already swallowed her tantrum whole. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the rooftops, Mrs. Alvarez raised a glass. To us, to standing together. Cheers echoed down the block. I looked around, the glow of string lights bouncing off smiling faces. For the first time, our neighborhood wasn't just a collection of houses, it was a community. Karen had tried to shut down a simple barbecue, but instead, she'd sparked something stronger, unity. From then on, things changed. The board rebalanced its priorities, neighbors grew closer, and weekend cookouts became tradition. Karen, though still lurking behind curtains, never regained her grip. And as I flipped the last burger of the night, I realized something. Sometimes the best way to fight control isn't with anger, but with togetherness. Karen had tried to silence one grill. Instead, the whole neighborhood lit a fire she couldn't put out. Enjoying this wild HOA showdown? Hit that subscribe button to catch more jaw-dropping neighborhood drama. Also, give this a like if you love the chaos, and drop a comment below. What would you do if Karen tried to shut down your BBQ?